Good morning, folks. This is the NeuroField Coherence and Phase webinar. Welcome. The date is October 24th, 2014, and it's 10:06 a.m. I'm really happy that all of you guys showed up for this thing. We've put an enormous amount of work into this software release. There are so many new things and so much new capabilities in NeuroField that we're all really excited about this. I want to send out a thanks to Brad Wiedela for all of his hard work. Brad has labored intensively for some time now to bring us to this new level of functionality. And believe me, this was no easy task. We're constantly beta testing and looking at the program and trying to figure out new ways to do things. And Brad has sustained all of our feedback and literally turns around and makes it a reality. Without him, NeuroField would not have happened. So a big thank you to Brad. I also want to thank Sophie and Annie. Their ability to take this program and tear it into little pieces and tell me what works and what doesn't work is extremely valuable, alongside everything else they do on a daily basis. So they're wonderful. A big thank you to Sophie and Annie, and another thank you to Christy Criney, who is here this week. She is shadowing me this week, and she's been nothing but help and wonderful, and I appreciate you being here. So right now, I have a person hooked up to the EEG. We have a full cap Q20 all set and ready to go. And hopefully everything works as designed. We'll find out if not. And I'm going to walk you through what we're doing here. We're going to talk a little bit about how phase and coherence affects the EEG. We're going to talk about how to look at the brain map and to start to make some interpretations. I'm going to walk you through the basics of how to actually use this new portion of the program. And some of the newer things associated with it. If you look up to the upper left-hand side of the screen here, you can see that we're at version 7.6.5, which nobody really has at this point, except for a couple of people. And we're going to release this very, very soon. I think Brad has maybe 4 more things on his development list that he wants to finish before we can. Let's see here. I'm hearing. Hang on. I'm hearing. Yeah, there's a little bit of. I'm muting all the other ones here. There we go. No echo. Okay, good. Brad has a couple more things on his development list that we have to finish, and then we're going to release this new updated version. It fixes some of the original issues that we came across over the last couple of weeks, and we've been really hitting the development quite hard at this point, which is good. All right. So one of the new things that you're going to see with version 6.7.6X, we'll just call it, there's a couple of things that are new. On the left-hand side of the screen here, you'll see this button that says 19-channel EEG Acquire. If you push this button, it will open up this EDF Plus file creator. And what it does, essentially, is it allows you to acquire 19 channels of EEG directly into NeuroField. We do all of our acquisition in NeuroGuide because it's simple and it saves the file as a NeuroGuide file, and then we can go directly into analysis and Z-score training if we want to. But some people have requested to use other software platforms to analyze their EEG, which is great, such as WinEEG, which is a remarkable EEG program for analysis. And in order to use WinEEG, you need to be able to save your acquisition file as an EDF file. So Brad built in this functionality. And basically, it's very simple to use. You simply put the cap on a person, set your impedances, and then you push this button and it opens up this window. And you'll see a couple of boxes here. One says total record time, and the number is 54. That's in seconds, so it's basically saying it will record for 54 seconds. The record length is 6 seconds. You can enter up to 1 to 9. And what I recommend is you leave the record length at 6 seconds. That's how many seconds get displayed on each scan. It makes it very easy to leave it at 6 seconds so you can watch the EEG as it's acquired. The EEG will be displayed in linked ears mode. If you want to, you can change the total record time. If you want to, you can make it 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and then once you set the desired amount of time, you have to think in seconds here. So if you want 5 minutes of time, 5 times 6, 300 seconds, you'd put that in there, and then you just simply press start recording. And I'm going to do that now. Here we go. And it'll automatically start to grab EEG and start to record it. If the signal's okay, then you'll get this green light. And it will start to record everything for you and piece it all together into a single file. And once it's done, it will save the EEG in the patient folder that you had selected. So you have to make sure you select the patient, and when you're looking for that EDF file after the recording, you will see it there. From there, you can take that EDF file and you can upload it into academic software or Win EEG and conduct different kinds of analysis. We've done this to expand the functionality of NeuroField and to make it easier to use other software platforms. Okay, so once it completes, now it's all done. Complete full recording, and it's made its EDF file, which should be in folder 316. If I go look in there, I'd find the folder and I'd find the file. All right, so once you're done with EDF recording, you can close that window. We put a couple of other things into the program. Some of them are works in progress that we haven't finished yet. Some of them are done. We do have an EEG signal generator now. I'm going to press on that. If you go to NeuroField Interfaces and you go EEG Signal Generator, you're going to see this little window pop up. The signal generator is an independent piece of hardware. We've made 5 of them so far. I don't know if people actually have an interest in getting these. We haven't talked about it too much. We use it for diagnostics and for beta testing. And what you're able to do is you can hook the signal generator up to the Q20. We give you a little ribbon cable and you hook it up, and it will inject the signal directly into the Q20. This allows you to be able to set a frequency and an output and test your amplifier. Now, for some people this may be of value, for others it may not. I'm not quite sure. It really depends on each particular person. If you are interested in something like this, let us know, and we will consider whether or not we're going to release this item. But if you see this in the software and you're wondering what is this, well, it is our signal generator, and it's designed primarily for just beta testing and for amplifier testing. When somebody says my Q20 doesn't work, we plug this thing in, dial in a frequency, and next thing we know, we have everything we need to test an amplifier and make sure everything works. Okay. I'm getting a little bit of echo from somebody. Where does it say? Oh, mute all. There we go. Thank you. And he's like, click the mute all button. Okay, got it. Okay, so that's the signal generator. So now, let's see. There's another thing in the software that this is a work in progress, and you'll see it here. If you go to NeuroField Interfaces and you go to Reaction Timer, and you click on that, it'll open up this little window. Now, what this window does is it begins a reaction time test. and it'll tell you what to do as you're going. But basically, the user is going to click on a button here each time they see a specific color. And you can monitor reaction times. And for some athletes, this is a big deal. They want to get faster reaction times. And so this is a way to pre-post test them to see if you actually sped them up. And so if I click on start here, it says press stop if box turns red, ignore if yellow. And so it shows you that. And then we're looking for red. And as soon as it says red, it's going to get going. And we're waiting for it to turn red. Come on, turn red. There it goes. Okay, so then it goes red, and you can see my reaction time was 727 milliseconds. And it will do a number of tests. I believe it does 60 runs, and then it will stop. And you can monitor this as you're going and see how a person actually does. All right. Let's see here. Oh, there's a maximum on the meeting. Oh, Lord. Okay. Okay, I'm going to stop this right now and get this test to stop. Okay, so let's get this to go away. If I click the button when the screen goes yellow or green, it'll say false start, and it'll dismiss the test. All right, so let's get it to stop. Uh-oh. Huh? Yeah. All right, here we go. Stop. This thing is really it really reflects Brad's work. He'll make you finish what you start. Oh, I'm at 636 milliseconds. That's great. Okay. Here we go. And this test, I guess we don't have an abort switch for this yet. Oh, it keeps on coming back. Okay, so we'll just put that one down there. Okay, so let's move on now. And I'll going to keep on going now. All right, so coherence and phase, the big deal, the reason why you're here. So what we built into the program is an expansion to the real-time z-score or RTZ procedure. So when you load the program up, it's very important that you pick your patient first. You want to select the patient because all the rest of the steps are going to save the data into the RTZ patient folder for that person. So I've picked my patient already, and you can see it says active patient ID 316 at the top. So I have my patient ready to go. The next thing I want to do is I want to enable EEG. So I enable EEG, then you click on enable z-score just like you would for enabling RTZ, and then you click enable RTZ. You're going to see a new checkbox at the bottom here, and it's automatically checked, and you should leave it that way. It says store data after each loop. Now, if you loop the RTZ program and you want to store the data, it will automatically store it each time it finishes one complete loop of a protocol, and it will store that data into the actual patient folder. This way you can load up that information into NeuroPlot, and you can see what happens during the session. Now, I've enabled this, and now you can see the sensor placement screen. You'll see we have the patient age, we have the eye status, we have QEEG cap, and we have individual electrodes. I like to run this full cap now. We've been running full cap tests all week, and I'm thinking that you get more bang for your buck when you do a full cap sensor placement, but you can also do it where you can do individual electrodes if you want to, and you can set up each of the 4 individual electrodes and set up phase and coherence pairs. But if you do it this way, you're limited to the maximum amount of pairs that you could choose, which would be 16, which would actually be the top end of what we're doing now. So actually 4 electrodes can work nicely, but you're limited in terms of if you want to do more than 4 electrodes. So the cap actually works nicely with this. So the first thing you do is you put the full cap on the person, enter their age, 22, yeah, and then the eyes condition. We're going to do eyes open. Then you click on Set Up Phase and Coherence Pairs. When you click on that button, it opens this window. And you can set up to 10 phase and coherence pairs. The phase and coherence pairs will be identical. Whatever you choose for the 10 pairs, they're going to appear in both the threshold setups for phase and coherence, and you're going to see how that works in a minute. So I need to pick my pairs here, and I need to do it based on a brain map. And I happen to have one right here. Now here's the brain map for this particular person, and this is a person who's very, very high functioning, has an unusual EEG, and attempting to balance this EEG would be interesting, to say the least. But what we're going to go after here is these hypocoherences that you see in beta and high beta, and what you can see here, if we actually focus in on them, is everything is pointing towards T6 and P4. And we can see these hypocoherent connections that appear to be from, you see, P4 to C3, P4 to CZ, P4 to C4, and then you can see the same kind of coherences from T6. So T6 to C3, T6 to CZ, T6 to C4. I'd really want to get those coherences. They're the most deviant out of all of them. And so I would put one coil from P3 to C3, another coil from CZ to PZ, or PZ, another coil from, let's see here, another coil from C4 to P4, and a coil on T6. We're doing that right now. So we're actually setting this person up. And you can see from the map that you see that there's a lot of phase lag here as well. So we have hypocoherence and a bunch of phase lag. Now, based on that, I'll keep my map open so I can set up my pairs. I'm going to set up each one. So I'll start with my P4. So I go up here and I select P4. And you notice when I select it, the button becomes unclickable. Now it means it's looking for one more button to be selected, so I'm going to P4 to C3, and you can see that the pair appears here. Then I want P4 to CZ, P4 to C4. And let's see what else we were looking for here. So I've managed to get those 3 right now. Then I want to do the same thing with T6. So I want T6 to C3, T6 to CZ, and T6 to C4. Now these are all in the high beta band. When you look at this map and you look down here, you'll see it's high beta that we see these primary hypocoherences. This is important to note because this is where you have to set your threshold. Okay, so now that I have I could go after these smaller coherences, but these are very small z-scores. I suggest for the beginning, when you start to do this, go after the most deviant, either hyper or hypo coherence. Now with this, I certainly can target the rest of them. I have more pairs. You can set up to 10 pairs. but I'm just going to go after the most deviant ones, like I said. So once I set it up the way I like it, then you click on Save Patient Pair Setup. Now I clicked on that, and at the bottom of the screen it says Patient-Specific Threshold Created for Patient 316, which means that all these pairs are now saved in that patient's folder. You can save one set of pairs per patient. So if you change them, they're going to look different the next time for that particular patient. But if you want to run that several times in a row, then the next time you're going to be able to come back and click on Get Pairs, and you don't have to re-enter all the data. It'll automatically load them. So I've saved the pairs. After you save the pairs, the next thing you do is click on Load Pairs and Close Window. So now the pairs are loaded, and the next thing we have to do is set the thresholds. So here's the next button right next to it here, and you see Select Z-score thresholds. And I'm going to click on that, and here we see all the pairs that I selected, and you can see them also displayed here on the ZCO, which is coherence, and ZPH, which is phase. ZAP is Z absolute power. So all of these are absolute power sites, and all these are coherence sites, and over here all these are phase sites. So what I can do now is I want to set my thresholds for the coherence. And I go over here and I'll click on the first pair here, and it's going to open the window for the Z-score threshold setup. And I'm going to grab the high beta 1 to -1 for each particular one. I'll go down, and I'm going to do it for each one. Now we've been making sure that all the thresholds are set as they claim to be. They should all be high beta 1 to -1, and you can click on View here, which will bring the threshold setup up. And here you can see high beta, it's checked, which means it's enabled, and you can see the upper Z-score is 1, the lower is -1. If it was anything different, you could re-enter numbers, click Update this threshold setting, and then click Return to Threshold Selection. And then it closes the window and reloads it. Once you correct it, it will stay corrected unless you change it again. So now I have all my thresholds set up for my coherence and phase. So the next thing I can do here is, looking at this map, this person may complain of a lot of different things, and it could be brain fog due to the excessive amount of theta. It could be mood irregularities due to the excessive frontal alpha. It could be perseverations and hyper-focused. It could be a lot of different things. And then it could be that this is just the way the person is wired. Over here on the left-hand side here, you can see that delta is low in comparison to the relative power for theta, alpha, and beta. Now, if I want to, again, you have to match the data up to the person. Using the old school RTZ procedure, I would usually think of grabbing delta and giving this person delta, even though it's regulated appropriately and a little bit high for this person in relation to this amount of beta. I might want to give this person delta. Again, it really depends on the symptom set of the person. If they're anxious, you may not want to give them any fast wave frequency. If they're if they're anxious, then you would want to give them delta and help them to regulate the beta and the high beta. But if they're depressed or they're low or they're expressing brain fog or they have a history of TBI, then you're going to want to speed up this brain and get it going faster. Now this high beta is showing this hypocoherence and an excessive phase lag, and we have to conceptualize how we want this to work, and we've just now. I want you all to understand that we've just busted into a whole new range, a whole new era of pulsed electromagnetic field therapy. This is something that is not being done in any other place that I know of in this way, because we have synchronized the EEG in such a way so that we can correct different kinds of issues with phase and coherence using the EMF formula. And so we have to look at what frequencies actually create a coherent state. What frequencies actually create a normalized speed of firing? What frequencies actually create a normalized level of absolute power? And we're going to be juggling this around now for quite some time. I would anticipate we're going to create some really neat procedures over the next year. But one of the things I can tell you in our initial work with this is that we have seen that different frequency speeds create different outcomes. And one of the things I have noticed so far is that gamma appears to have a regulatory effect on the EEG that is quite astounding. And on each person that we've tried it with, be it they have hypocoherence or hypercoherence, either end of the scale, we tend to see a regulation of the EEG that brings the z-scores into the normal range. And this is fascinating stuff because I've never anticipated that gamma would actually do that, but it does. So one of the things that I'm going to do here is I'm going to regulate delta on this person on the frontal lobe, along with all of these high beta coherences. Even though it isn't a normal level, I want to see this regulated. So I'm going to go to F3, and I'm going to choose delta. F4, I'm going to choose delta. And FZ, I'm going to choose delta. And F8, I'm going to choose delta. All of these should be set up right. Oh, look at that one. Somebody in my office changed the number. Or it was Brad, one of the two. So I change these numbers back. I click Update, Return, and that one should be good to go. Oh, this one's changed too. Always check your threshold setups. Sometimes, unless you're the only one using them, you should be good to go. That one's okay. And this one is okay. Okay, so all my deltas are set up. Now, I can go after phase here because phase is deregulated. And they're the same sites, well, close to the same sites. We can hit we didn't get the 01 in there. I could add 01 to this pair, and I think I'm going to, because 01 is deregulated there with phase. So we want to see if we can get that as well. So I'm seeing definitely T6 to C3, and T6 to F8, T6 to F4. Those are all firing slowly. We could enter those in. The more metrics you get in there, the more difficult it is for a person to actually get a hit when you run this. But we still have 4 areas in which we can add stuff. So what I'm going to do here, and it's all high beta. Let's see. I'm going to load the threshold setups. I'm going to go back into setup pairs, and I'm going to add in 01 to C3, T5 to C3, 01 to C3, and T5 to C3. We'll load those pairs, get those going in there. Oh, it didn't do it. Another thing for the development list. Okay. I did load it. I did. No. It would overwrite them. Okay, that's another thing. Okay, we'll come back to that later. We're going to go with what we have now. Now on the threshold logic mode, I'm circling this right now. This is an important change. We have the and or logic, and that's always been there with the RTZ paradigm. And logic indicates that every one of the thresholds has to meet the z-score value that you set for it in order to give the reward tone. Or logic says any one of them that meets the threshold value, you give a reward to. So OR is very easy to achieve. And with a lot of thresholds, OR is not the logic that you want to use, and is the most difficult logic you can set up. It is all or none. All of them have to make it, otherwise you don't get a reward tone. So the new thing that Brad built in was a percentage. And so now we have a percentage threshold. You can enter a number here, and you can say, okay, what percentage of all these thresholds have to be met before a reward tone is given? So I'm going to enter in 50. So now I'm looking for a 50%. 50% of these thresholds have to be met, and if they are, then you'll get a reward tone. If they are not, then you will not get a reward tone, and the RTZ procedure will continue and modulate to the next frequency until you do get 50% of the thresholds. This is a very cool way to make this much more like real operant conditioning. Once you set your percentage threshold, and you get it all set up the way you want to, then you can click on Save Patient Thresholds. So I'm going to click on that. And if you look at the bottom of the screen here, it says patient-specific threshold updated for patient ID 316, which means that all of these thresholds have now been added to that particular patient ID. So the next time that you load NeuroField and you want to do the very same therapy with the person, all you have to do is go to the setup phase in Coherence, click on Get Pairs, and then you load it, and it'll close it. Then you load this one. You go into Setup, select Z-score thresholds, click on Get Patient Thresholds. It will load all these. You set your percentage, and you click Load Thresholds in Close Window, and you will be ready to go. It takes all the setup steps out of the way. It makes it very, very easy to get started. Okay, so now that I have everything set up, the next thing I do is I click on Load Thresholds in Close Window. All right, now the person's ready to go. We're doing this with eyes open. What we've been doing with people is asking them to sit silently. These are with adults, obviously. With adults, we ask them to sit silently, pick a target in the room, relax, and look straight ahead, and listen for the tone. When they hear the tone, most people will identify a feeling that they get when they hear the tone. And I tell people to go with the feeling, not to try to force the tone to come on. If you try to force it, it doesn't work. And they end up creating frequencies that just aren't going to match your threshold setups, and you don't get a good training. The EMF from NeuroField automatically shows the brain what we want it to do. So the hardest thing for a person to do is to get out of their own way. And I tell people, this is the time for you not to try. Simply look straight ahead, relax, keep your jaw loose, breathe normally, swallow normally, and just relax. Get out of your own way and let your brain do the work, because it knows how to do it better than you do. And it's kind of a funny statement, but it's very true. Okay, so we're going to get started here. And I'm going to start this so you can see how it actually works. And so I'm going to click on Start Standard Treatment. Oh, please select a STIM protocol. That's right. So now I need to select something to give this person. Now, as I was saying earlier, you can use the old RTZ philosophy of if a person's too fast, you can give them slow waves such as delta. If they're too slow, you can give them fast waves such as 12 to 15 SMR or low beta from 15 to 19, or you can go even faster than that. But one of the things that I'm currently looking at is gamma. In the NeuroField database, I've made a number of changes and additions. Annie and I have been playing around with different combinations of frequencies that tend to have a pretty good effect with some people. And so you'll see that there's some new ones in here. And you'll see 1 to 15, 1 to 20, 1 to 30. These are all HD protocols. There's 5 to 15. That's one that Annie came up with. And then here's another one, 43 to 46, which is your gamma range. And we really like this one. I really like this one. Here's the alpha theta HD protocols, and here's a new alpha theta ultra low protocol. This one gives alpha theta, and it also gives gamma, and it also gives 0.31 to 0.4 frequency PEMF, and it weaves it right in with gamma. This one has a really profound effect with people with depression, people with anxiety. It's also good for peak performance and athletes. And if you look down here, you're going to see a couple of different rocking protocols that I injected into here, and a new one that I call Gamma Jump, which is inserting gamma in between each one of the frequency bands. It's kind of like that old one that I wrote years ago called Rocking the Spectrum. And that was a cool one where it was an old lens protocol where it would give a stim for each specific frequency band, and it would go through 7 frequency bands. This one does something similar to that, but in between each frequency band, it's giving gamma from 44 to 45 hertz. So these are all new things for you to play with. But one of the things we've been seeing with RTZ that is quite amazing is that gamma appears to be a regulatory frequency that ties coherences together. And if they're hypercoherent, it brings them down to a coherent level. If they're hypocoherent, it brings them up to a coherent level. I'm still trying to understand the dynamics behind this, and I'm sure we're going to be looking at this for quite some time. So this is the one I'm going to select right now. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to loop this so that it loops 10 times. I may not use all these loops. The program may lock into a specific frequency, and so it's it may not run all 10 of the loops. But I do want the program to continue. I don't want any spaces in between each one of the loops. In the past, I would have run just one loop and tried to find the threshold areas that really get the person moving. But I found that if you simply loop the program, there we go, then it works very well. Okay, so I set up 10 loops now, and I'm going to select enclose. And the program's ready to go. Now that I've set up those 10 loops, it's very important that you monitor the time on the person. We have found that a 30-minute RTZ session seems to have a very good clinical effect. With some people that are more hardy or more difficult to get to, you can go longer. You can go up to 45 minutes if you want to. But 30 minutes tends to do the trick for most people. So make sure you keep an eye on the time. You don't want it to go too long. Okay, so here we go. You ready to go? All right. So we're going to start this. We're going to start the procedure now, and the EEG kicks on, and we see the first set of numbers pop up, and you're going to see at the bottom here a number of status updates. Brad does a couple of things to clear out the tables, then the first stim is given. And then NeuroField turns on. And what we're going to do here is watch the Z-score table. Now, I could hear that stim through my headphones. I don't know if you guys could hear it, but if you could, then what it's telling us is that 60% of the thresholds at the bottom here, you can see it says 6 out of 10 were hit, 60%. And if it's hit, then she gets the tone. If not, then it does what it just did, and it modulates, and it goes to the next one. Some of the new features of the program is that you will see that each one of the thresholds you set up are now highlighted. Now, we're on the absolute power page, and so these are some of our setups. And you can go over to the phase coherence pair page, and now we can look at the phase and coherence pairs. And this, what I have been seeing with gamma is that the brain will regulate very quickly to gamma. And you can see some of these hypocoherent sites are already starting to regulate. And what the brain will do is it will attempt to go back to doing what it was doing. And when it does that, NeuroField modulates. So now it gives it a novel frequency, and then the brain will respond to that frequency, and then you'll see the coherence change. So each time you hear the little whistle, then right after the reward is given, the new z-scores are posted. And you can see how we have 5 out of 6 coherences correct there. And at the bottom, you can see how many hits are actually are achieved and how many thresholds are enabled and what the hit status was. Can you hear that on the speakers here? No? Okay, so I'm hearing it through my headphones. Once the brain locks in, it's quite impressive because everything will start to show you a normalized z-score. And remember, some of these hypocoherences were greater than 3 z-scores, like this one from P4 to PZ. You see that one's it's trying to go back to doing what it was doing. But these numbers are starting to come up. What is great about this procedure is that it's a combination of EMF and operant conditioning that is practically simultaneous. The EMF shows the brain what we want it to do, and then the brain does it, and then we reinforce it with a operant conditioning reward. In old school neurotherapy and even the most current methods of neurotherapy, we're waiting for the brain, the randomness of the brain, to create the frequency that we want to see it create. And when it does so, we reward it. And in the NeuroField RTZ paradigm, this synchronization removes the antecedent. We essentially don't wait for the randomness of the brain to create the frequency that we want to see. We show it what we want it to do. And then we stop, and then we measure, and we see if it's actually doing it. And then if it is, we reward it. I have found this method, there we go, all of them corrected on that one. That was great. I have found this method to be far more effective than doing operant conditioning by itself. When you pair it with operant conditioning, it's simply amazing, and it's very, very fast. You can do RTZ for 20 minutes in a session, and then shut off NeuroField and go into your flavor of neurofeedback and run a neurofeedback session. That combination is a very effective combination as well, simply because you've primed the brain and showed it what you want it to do, and then you have it do it itself throughout a operant conditioning session. You can do that within the same hour, or you can do it in 2 different hours in a day. So you could have a person come in the morning, you can give them the RTZ paradigm for 30 to 45 minutes, send them out for 2 hours, and then bring them back in the afternoon, and you can run a Loretta neurofeedback or a surface neurofeedback or good old amplitude training. Regardless of how you set it up, there are ways to pair and integrate the therapies so that you get the maximum treatment effect. We have found that when you do that, people move through therapy much quicker, you achieve the treatment effect much faster, and the amount of sessions needed is greatly reduced. And I believe that this is really going to improve the efficacy of neurotherapy greatly, simply because of the way this thing works. Let's see, we're watching these numbers. The real sticking point here is at P4 to CZ. This one doesn't want to move. The rest of them are moving, but this one is really sticking. And you can see how it bounces back. What you'll see, what we've been seeing is a rebound effect. The brain will try to go back to the coherent state that it was in, but then when NeuroField modulates, it makes it go back into the normal state. And you can see how that corrected there from negative 3.7 z-scores to negative 0.251. See, and it bounced back again. So now it goes back to negative 4. And there was no hit there, so NeuroField modulates. And when it modulates, it brings the numbers back into the normal range. Now, I know I've been talking for a while here. Let me check the questions. I can see. Okay. Are there any questions so far about the procedure? Not about the EEG, but more about the procedure here. You can see how all of them corrected. You can type a message and send it over to me if you're curious about any portion of the procedure. Anything that's confusing to you, anything that you might have missed. And you can see how this one is regulating. And you can watch the entire process here. We have taken NeuroPlot and we have updated NeuroPlot so that you can upload the phase, the coherence, and the absolute power data that you generate from this version of the program into NeuroPlot. And then you can look at how the session actually played out, and I'm going to be showing you that here in a moment. And Marie says, can you change any of the pairs on the fly? Nope, we can't. Unfortunately, the way we are set up right now, we can't do that. In the future build of NeuroField, we are looking at on-the-fly changes for the pairs and for the thresholding. It is possible to do it, but right now we don't have that built into the program. Good question, though, and a good thing to put on our development list for the future. But, you know, if you really want something done in development, what you do is you go onto your computer, you open your email, you type in neurofield@yahoogroups.com, and you send a message to Brad, and you say, please, Brad, can you build in this? And more than likely, you will get what you want if it's possible. Okay, a couple of questions came in. Michael said, can you change the stim on the fly like you can in regular RTZ? I believe you can. Nothing's changed in that regard. So you should be able to do that. What he's referring to is changing the protocol. You can click in and grab it and change a new one. Ralph says, without the Q20, can I do 2 pairs for electrodes only? You should be able to do this with the X2000 and the Q20. So, but you're just limited to 2 electrodes. So you're only going to be limited to specific pairs that you choose. So if you choose 2 sides, that's the pair that you're going to be treating. So with the Q20, you have the option of running the breakout box with 4 electrodes. You can run this with 4 electrodes. Or you can run it with 19, and with the X2000, you can run it with 2 electrodes. Let's see. And Al says, coherence normally varies from moment to moment. Perhaps we are just catching it at down moments or up ones, so what looks like regulation is just a random capture. We need a graph of progress over time, not just momentary flashes. That is true, which is why at the end of the session, I'm going to plot all this data for you so you could actually see the trend analysis showing you which way coherence actually goes. Also, what we've done is we've done this over consecutive days with people, and we have pre-post QEEG showing normalization of coherence over a week of treatment. So I don't think this is a random appearance of normality in the coherence. I believe what we're seeing is a correction in the coherence. Based on the data so far, it strongly suggests that. So let's see, any other questions? No, I answered Marie. And Peter says, in a case like this, would you use DHAB before RTZ? You certainly could. If you have a person that hasn't responded to the RTZ and you've run it before, they're not responding to neurotherapy, you certainly can use the dehabituation method, which is basically creating random frequencies to decouple the brain or disentrain it. The dehabituator is a form of disentrainment. And so what we want to do is break up abnormal pairs or get the brain to engage in a phase shift, essentially. So it's entirely possible to use the DHAB, but before I would go into it, I would want to see you try less invasive methods first. You can see some of these are actually going hyper at this point, which is interesting. We've been running now for 13 minutes and 13 seconds. And we're still on, I believe we're still on the first loop. Yeah, so we're still on the first loop. You can see that, even though I put 10 loops in there, this person's brain is definitely responding to the treatment. You can see RTZ hit count, we have 44 hits, which means that the 50% threshold that I set is being met 44 times, which is pretty good. That's what we typically want to see. Let's see, are there any questions here? And okay, and Miriam asks, Peter had a good question. Would you run DHAB before RTZ, phase and coherence with a patient in this case? And I think I've answered that. And Michael wants to see the ZAP scores. So we're bringing those up here. Folks, I'd like to see more research and examination of the gamma frequency. Simply because, the NeuroGuide Z-score database is great, but it stops at 30 hertz. And the gamma frequency is higher than that, obviously. We're looking at 43 to 46. But I believe it has a profound effect on networks, along with a host of other things. And I think gamma is underutilized and underrepresented in the neurofeedback field. I think one of the reasons is that it's not easy to train because it's such a small frequency. But with electromagnetic field therapy like we have here, we can give gamma. We can increase the amplitude of gamma during the training, and we can influence it much, much more effectively than any other form of operant conditioning, because we're showing the brain what we want it to do, and we're giving it. We're not waiting for the random effects. Ralph says, have you considered gamma in the mid 40 to 60s? Sure. I've looked at that. I have to say, I'm going to give a wave out to Michael Villanueva. Michael was really one of the people that came up to me and said, 44 hertz appears to have a significant effect on the EEG. And I agree with him. He's done hundreds of alpha theta sessions, and I believe he understands that methodology much better than most, and has seen and observed gamma frequencies with his alpha theta sessions, and so I'm and alpha theta gamma sessions, which we both learned from Douglas Daly, who is the person that wrote the tag protocols. So I really feel like it's something to look at. Al Collins says gamma as binding frequency, bringing different sensory modalities together, long known. Linnaeus, yeah, and there is research around it, definitely. But at the last ISNR, I don't know how many of you checked it out. I was looking for gamma work, and when I did my little circles around the circus tent, and I didn't see hardly anything in gamma. So I found it very interesting that there's not too much talk about it. You know, and I think throughout the years of neurotherapy, it's definitely been looked at, but I want it to come back again. Michael says theta gamma cross frequency coupling relates to the level of human intelligence, and he references I want to say this right, PAHOR 214, PAHOR 214. That's right, and Michael sent me that study. Maybe we can post that on the listserv, Michael. That would be one for everybody to take a look at. I'm going to go back to the phase and coherence pairs. I don't know if can you guys hear the reward tone across your speakers? No. Okay. I'm hearing it through my headphones here. We're almost through the first loop. I'm going to see if we can get it through the first loop here. And you can see how the brain fights to go back to a hypocoherent state. But each modulation changes it. And it brings the brain back into the normal range or close to it, which is a form of entrainment, essentially. Okay. So now that the loop ended there, if you notice the screen just changed and it's starting over again. At the bottom here you can see test data successfully created. It created a data file. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to abort the program and load that data into NeuroPlot so we can take a look at what happened here. Now one of the new functions that we built into NeuroField here is, you see how it says store data after each loop. Well, the loop ended and it stored the data. But if you get about halfway through a loop and you want to stop the session, you can, and you won't lose your data. If you click abort process, it should create another set of data files, just like it did here, and store whatever you had in that second loop into a new set of files, so you don't lose your data. Alrighty, so thank you for that. If you want to take it off, you can. Okay. So now we're going, how do you feel? Yeah, good. Be interesting to see. Or maybe leave the EEG cap on, and then maybe we'll grab some data and then take a look and see what you look like. That would be interesting to do. Yeah, let's give the brain a couple minutes to cool down. Okay, so patient file is 316. Jill said, would you show us how to load the file? Are you referring to NeuroPlot, Jill? Yes. Okay, that's what I'm going to do right now. Okay, so her file is in folder 316. So I'm going to bring up NeuroPlot now, and this is NeuroPlot version 8.3. Again, we're going to release this shortly as soon as Brad finishes the rest of his development, which will probably be this weekend. At the bottom here, you're going to see 3 tabs. It says Z-score, coherence, and phase. What I want to do first is load the Z-score data. And so I click on the Z-score tab. At the bottom here, or at the top here, you're going to see some more buttons. It says load Z-score data and create new plots. So I can load the data pressing this button. The next one is print Z-score data, and the next one is print Z-score plots, and then you can save the plots as well. So this new version of NeuroField, or NeuroPlot rather, gives us the ability to do a little bit more with our plots and to be able to save and print the data. So if you click on Load Z-score data and create new plots, then it opens up a window, and it should take you to the patient data folder. And the patient data folder should come up, and these are a lot of shoulds, they should come up in, what did you click on to get into this? Okay, I will come back to it, Jill. When it opens up the this folder, this is the patient data folder, and this is the path here. It's the C drive, NeuroField data, patient data. And this is where all your patient data is stored. If you have it set up to where it shows the most recent data, the last person you treated should be at the top of the list. If you click on date modified, it will sort the data by date, and then you can see the folder. Remember, she was 316. When I go back in here, she's person 316, so she's at the top of the list. All right, so I go back into this, and I'm going to click in here. Now, at the top of this, it says Open ZAP Data File, and then in parentheses, it says ZAP Z-score data with a little underscore. And so what I want to see here is I want to get rid of some of these things. It's important to be able to see the date. So I'm right-clicking on this caption bar. I'm going to click on Date Modified. And this brings up all the dates. And I want to see the one that's most recent. And there we go. So here, the ZAP Z-score data that's absolute power. ZCO is coherence. ZPH is phase. Now, these are the last three files that were created when I aborted the process, which means there's not too much data in that because we had just finished the loop. Now, when we started this, you can see there's three more files here, same thing, absolute power, coherence, and phase. And this contains all of the data for that first run-through that we did. So this is what we want to look at. So it's asking for the ZAP Z-score data. So I'm going to click on that one, and I'm going to click Open. It will fly the data into the program and then immediately start a plot for you. And you can look at each one of these based on frequency and based on site. So these are all the sites on the right-hand side here. It says FP1, FP2, F3, F4, all and so forth, all the way down to PZ. Now the plot shows you a line here, and this line is a trend analysis. It tells you which way the session was trending in each specific frequency. So when we look at the top here, it says delta. So we're looking at the delta frequency, and we're seeing the z-scores in the vertical axis, with the z-score 0 in the middle, going positively up and negatively down. And on the horizontal axis, these are each one of the stim cycles during the treatment on that first loop. And we can see at FP1, delta came down a bit. All right. Now, I'm interested in a lot of things here. I could scroll through and say, let's go frequency up and look at theta, and I can see what theta did. And then I can see what alpha did. And you can see how alpha went up. Alpha 1, alpha 2, beta, beta 1, beta 2, beta 3, and then high beta. Now I can go through each one of the channels. So I can let's try increasing. I can go through each one of the channels and look at what happened at each site for a specific frequency band. And it gives you a sense of any changes that did occur. What I found is that the trend is actually quite accurate. If you do a QEEG, you'll probably see it trend in the same direction in your brain map when you do a pre-post. Once you click through all of them, then you can go to a different frequency band and then examine what happened there. Her delta or her theta was quite high. So let's take a look and see what happened at theta. Oops. So we see an increase in theta at PZ. CZ comes down a bit. FC comes down a bit. And you can see how some of these changes occurred. There's some changes, but not a whole lot. So let's go over to coherence here, because that's what we were actually looking at. And I want to grab her coherence data. And there it is. Okay, if you remember, some of these sites were more than 3 standard deviations below the norm. And again, like Al says, you know, these things trend. So what I'm going to do here is I want to look at high beta first, because that's where all these things were. And we want to see what high beta actually did. And remember, it was hypocoherent. And so we see the P4 to C3 connection. It actually went down a bit. Ooh, look at that. High beta, let's see, that's P4 to CZ. Dropped even more. Dropped, no change, no change. So nothing significant at the high beta coherence for high beta itself. She's a tough nut to crack, I tell you. All right. That would be one to work on. Maybe it should have been delta that we gave you. Okay, so I'm going to change it, the frequency here and go to theta and see what happened there. Michael's suggesting that. Let's check theta. Okay, so theta appears to go up a little bit, down a bit, up a bit. So no real changes there. Let's look at alpha. Again, you're seeing big variability here. You can see on the plot here that this coherence was definitely coming. You know, you could see how low it actually dips, but you can see how many times that NeuroField actually brought it up to a normal level. Many times, but the trend doesn't really reflect it. But looking at this data, these are big, big changes. And even though they may have gone down, it got pulled up many, many times, which is pretty significant. So it's one thing to look at the trend analysis, is another to look at, you know, how much was the actual coherence getting pulled up versus getting pulled down. If we look at that high beta again, you can see there was a lot of places in that training where the coherences came up, but even though it trended down. Yeah, exactly. And he was saying it's this one particular site that really trends everything down, which is that one right there. But again, there was a pretty significant response, and I think in a single training, that's a really good response. But over time, I think what would happen is that we would see this start to normalize. That would be my guess. So let's look at phase. Remember, there was a lot of phase lag. So let's go to that high beta. Michael asks, can you remove a pair from the analysis? I don't think we have that capability yet, but that's something we could put on the list. Okay, here we go. So let's see. That P4 to CZ is a stickler. That one really has a hard time. So some variability, not much. I mean, there's a good amount of variability. Some what I meant to say was some change in the trend. There's the beta 3, and we see a change there. Yeah, there we go. So we see some changes in phase in beta 3, and there it is. That sucker. That's a hard one. Of course, I had to pick a brain that is very stubborn. I'll pay for that later. Let's see here. Really good. This is a good response. What I'm liking about this is that even though the trends aren't significantly different, we're seeing these points here in the graph. These are all stem cycles where things really normalized, and you can see where the brain is attempting to go back to doing what it was doing, which is a reflection of the real data that we were able to observe in the QEEG. So there's a strong correlation here. The QEEG accurately catches the phase anomalies, the coherence anomalies, and we're able to replicate that with this plot in NeuroPlot. But we're also able to demonstrate here that we're able to pull up these specific metrics into the normal range, into the normal z-score range. And just eyeballing this, I could tell you that there's a significant difference between the pre and post. And I'm sure if we actually drop this data into SPSS and conducted a statistical analysis or run Neurostat and look at and look at these coherence changes, we're going to see a significant difference from pre to post. Which just eyeballing this data, it certainly looks that way. Of course, running the analysis is going to tell us for sure. But this is a real good demonstration of where we want to go with this. If you notice, look at this. None of this data is going over a Z of 1, so it's not driving it in the other direction into an abnormal range. It's pulling it up into the normative range, and then the brain responds and attempts to go back to doing what it was doing, which I'm reiterating multiple times because that's a powerful dynamic. You notice none of them really go up into an excessive range. They get close to it, but again, they stay pretty darn consistent. What was that? And that's what Annie just said. The point is for it to be a gentle therapy, a gentle physical therapy, which is the way we like to refer to this. And we can see the high beta phases also came up in a way that really looks good here. Let's go back to those coherences and look at the same thing. Yeah, see, none of them really, they jump up. And again, this is a really great representation of that hypocoherence that we observed in the Q. We were able to replicate that effect. We're also able to show how we're able to bring it up. Peter says, so there is a response to the stim, but learning is taking longer? Question mark. Is there anything to stimulate learning? Question mark. Like training the dorsal attention network? Well, Peter, the answer to that question is that the operant conditioning portion of the real-time z-score is the learning. That's the stimulus. It's designed to help the person to learn how to actually create the frequency that we're looking for. So when they're training in this, you want them to be mindful of the tone. You want them to pay attention to it, but you don't want them to try to force the tone to come on. That's a very, very important piece to operant conditioning. Yeah, Annie's saying that this may not have been as effective because she could not hear the tone during the training. This was simply, I could hear it because of the way this computer is set up. It came through my headphones. It didn't come through the computer speakers, unfortunately. So what we just saw here was half of the RTZ paradigm, what the EMF actually does. If she could hear the tone, we may have had a better treatment effect. Which is entirely possible. Let's see, did I see another question? Al says, so variability and coherence should be higher during training than before or after? Oh, I don't know, Al. We'll have to examine that over time. I haven't looked at that. I need to look at more pre-post data in order to answer that question. It's a good one, though. And I suggest we all look at it. Theoretically, it makes sense. Any other questions so far? I saw some general ones about how we get here, so I'm about to jump into that. Isn't this cool stuff? Let's see. Oh, here we go. Let's see here. Grant says, if you had put the percent at 40, would the patient had more hits? Probably, yes, because it's easier. The lower you make the percentage, the easier it is to get hits. So that means less of the thresholds would have had to be met, yes. My brain's going in 10 different directions now. Ruth Kreider says, how long would you wait to re-cue? One of the things about NeuroField is that when you do this kind of work with somebody, you have to give them some downtime before you re-cue. If you re-cue right after the treatment, you're going to see a brain in transition. It takes time for a brain to be able to I say recalibrate or assimilate. There's different ways you can say this, to re-regulate itself. And so you want to give it some downtime. We like to, if we do an intensive with somebody, we'll treat them Monday through Friday, give them Saturday and Sunday off, and then on Monday morning when they come back in to continue, the first thing we do is get another cue. So we give them usually a couple days off, and then we look at the data, and typically we'll see the treatment effect within that period of time. Marie asks, if you are training a child, can you use another medium other than tone? Right now you cannot. It has to be the tone, but you certainly can have the tone on and you can let them watch a movie. Just reduce the volume of the movie so that the tone is louder than the movie. Skinner's cat didn't understand when it was receiving a stimulus or a reward tone. It conditioned to that tone. So if a person isn't conscious, or I shouldn't use the word conscious, if they don't understand what that noise is, it doesn't mean that they're not going to get conditioned to it. They are. And Skinner demonstrated that a long time ago. So you certainly just have to make sure that the tone is within the auditory range of the child and make sure that the movie isn't drowning out the tone. And you should be able to get a treatment effect. We do that with kids all the time. We'll put a movie on and we'll just lower the tone of the movie. But for adults, recently here, we've just had adults looking straight ahead. I know it's boring, but it is a form of open eyes or eyes closed meditation where we take a person into a whole nother level of focus. And the people that we do this with have reported significant responses after the sessions and the day later. They come back and they tell us, boy, I really felt that. I really experienced something as a result of it. We had a lady that had a very significant head injury. She fell off of her bicycle and hit her head at T5. She hit so hard that it broke the helmet off of her head, cracked it right off of her head. She had hypocoherence coming from T5 that spiderwebbed out to a number of different sites. She was the first one that we actually ran a live session on, and the hypocoherence is corrected during that session. And the next day when she came in, she looked like a different person, and she reported a couple of things. The first was she reported that she was wiped out after the session, extremely tired, and had to go to sleep for a couple of hours. Then she reported that she was tired for the remainder of the day. She went to bed early that night, slept the entire night, woke up the next day, and felt like she described it, and this is a quote, "It feels like I took off a tight suit." S-U-I-T, taking off a tight suit. And she reported feeling freer in her cognition and much more comfortable in her own skin. She reported this to be a very positive effect and almost instantaneous within 24 hours treatment effect. Okay, so Michael says, working with phase metrics rarely results in within state changes. You see that in TAG a lot. Some relaxation maybe really tired, but the real stuff tends to emerge in the days to come. I agree. It takes time for the system to stabilize and for the training to really settle in. So we're not looking for the quick magic pill here, but I am interested in state effects and how this actually affects a person immediately and over the long term. All right, so let me show you something else here. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to minimize NeuroPlot for a moment. Jill and Sarah wanted to know more of the specifics. How did I get into here? So the data was saved with NeuroField. On my desktop, I have NeuroPlot 8.3. You have to have Microsoft Excel loaded on your computer in order for this to work. When you double click on this, it opens up the Excel program and will open up NeuroPlot, and you'll see it like this. Now I'm going to delete all my current plots, and it will open up on the Z-score tab. All right, so now when you want to get your data, you click on Load Z-score data and create new plots. Now it's taking me to the last folder that I had open, but normally it will take you right to this folder, which is the patient data folder. It should open it right here, and it should be at the top of the page like that. The most recent folder should be the one that you see. Now there's a lot of shoulds here depending on how your computer is configured. You want to look at the date modified for the folder and match up the patient ID number to the one that you have in NeuroField. For this patient, the patient ID number can be found at the top of the caption bar. It's number 316. So I go back over here and you can see patient ID, and you see 00316. So there's our patient data. And so I click into that folder, and there's all the data from the session, minus the HRV data. So let's say that didn't exist. Let's make that go away. I can't make it go away. Oh, darn it. All right. So then you'll see ZAP, ZCO, ZPH. And you're going to see it for each time that, for every loop that's run, NeuroField will create 3 text files. It'll create these 3 text files. If you abort the program, it'll create the last whatever data was left in that loop and create 3 more text files for you. That way you can load each one in and take a look at it. So at the top here, it says in this caption, the ZAP Z-score data. That's the first file it wants because I'm on the Z-score tab. So I grab that one and I click open. And there we go. And now we can see in the last, when I aborted it, we only had 2 stim cycles, and you can see it's only mapping the 2 stim cycles. Then I go to the next one, and I look at coherence. Again, I click on load coherence data, I grab ZCO. Then I click open. And now you can see the coherence data and what happened there. wonder what happened on high beta, just for curious minds. And there it is. Some of these trended down, some of them trended up, and again, you're just kind of catching the brain in transition. Load phase data, we click on that, and I grab the phase data, same way, click open, and it loads it. And now we can look at what's happening with phase. So that's how you actually look at the data in NeuroPlot, and that's how you actually load the data files. Are there any questions about that so far? Okay, one of the things I'm going to show you is I'm going to go back into NeuroField now. And let's say we've treated our person. They come back and you want to run the same session again. So I exit the program. Now I click on my NeuroField icon. I have all my programs set on my taskbar here. I click on it, and it starts NeuroField up. One of the new things in NeuroField, and I didn't say anything about this yet, and I think I'll say it now. You see where it says, I'm circling it right now, it says patient database locations. This will default to the C drive for most of you. But you can change where your patient database is located, and you can put it on a shared drive on a network. So what this allows you to do is take the patient database, put it on one computer, and be able to access it with a number of computers all at the same time. As many of you know, here at NeuroField we have 5 treatment rooms. All of the computers are networked together. And on one computer, we have a shared drive, and all the computers belong to the same home group. We've moved the patient database to that shared drive. Every one of the computers looks for the Nicholas PC, and then we have this little NeuroField and QEEG drive, and it says NeuroField PDB, which is patient database, and then right here, it actually says patients MDB. So this is where we keep our patients database. All the other computers point to this network location. So if you want to change the location of your patient's database, you simply click the browse, and it opens up your Windows Explorer. Now right now it's pointing at the C drive, and normally the patient database would be in this path right here at patients. This is where you'd normally see it, under C, NeuroField, NeuroField data, and patient data. And this is where the patient's data is going to be. Now, we don't want to use that. We want to use the shared patients database, and it's on our network here. These are all the computers that we have stuff set up on. Nicholas PC is the one. So I click on that, and then you can see the NeuroField QEEG drive. I click in there, and then I'm going to find the folder where we keep the database, and there's our patients database. You click on it, and you're basically pointing at it. Then you click open, and now the program's going to remember where you actually keep your patient's database. And this enables you to have multiple users using the same patient database simultaneously. In this way, if you've seen one person in one room one week, and then the next week they're in another room, you don't have to go running into the other room to look at their patient data. You can bring it all up on the same network simultaneously. Okay, so I start my program. It brings me in, and of course it asks, do I want to save the data? You should say yes, but I'm going to say no right now. And then what I want to do is I want to treat my person again. So I go select patient, I go down, I'm going to find my patient, highlight that patient, select and close. Now what I can do here is I can view the history. The history tab has been updated to reflect the new changes in the program, so you can look at what you've done before. You can see that I gave on 10/24/214, starting at 11:03, the 43 to 46 HD protocol. You can see that I looped it 10 times and I used the full stem cycle EEG, that's RTZ. You can see that the ZAP tab is depressed, and that we used on what channels we actually set the delta and the threshold for absolute power. You can go to ZCO, see what pairs were set and what thresholds were set, and ZPH, you can also see the same thing. So the history has been expanded to add all those things. But we want to treat our patients, so we go, okay, we know we gave the alpha, theta, the alpha gamma, or the gamma protocol rather. I go down here, I grab my gamma protocol, and I load it. I set my loops to 10, or whatever I want to set it to. I select and close. So now my protocol is loaded. Then I enable EEG, enable Z-score, enable RTZ. I put my patient age in, and then set the eyes condition. Then I click on Set Up Phase and Coherence Pairs. Now this time we've already done it. If you've done all the steps that I've just shown you, all you have to do now is click on Get Patient Pair Setup. I click it and it loads all the pairs for me. It is very important now that you actually click on Load Pairs and Close Window. Do not X out, otherwise you won't load the pairs. So we click Load Pairs, Close Window. The pairs are loaded now. We go into Select Z-score Thresholds. If you notice, all the pairs are here. All right. The next thing we want to do is we want to get our thresholds that we had set up from last time. Click on Get Patient Thresholds. We click them. It automatically loads your thresholds that you had from last session. It is important to notice okay. You're welcome, Sarah. No problem. Sarah said, thank you for making all the saving available. The percentage still comes up as 0. We haven't put the last piece in here where it will actually load the percentage value. We're going to add that into the database. So you have to add whatever percentage you want to set your threshold at. And then once you got it all ready to go, then you just click on Load Thresholds and Close Window, and you are ready to go. Ralph asked a question. Ralph said this looks much different. Ralph, this is the exact same setup that we used last time. It's just now it's automated because I loaded all the stuff. I didn't have to create the pairs. I didn't have to load the threshold setups. All of them were saved, and I just showed you the quick way to get into the program to load everything up. So they're exactly the same, actually. Jill says, way cool. Ralph says, all same setup. Thought protocol was just 43 to 46. Nope, we did RTZ, and so it couldn't be 40. If it was just 43 to 46, it would have been a stim only. So we were monitoring EEG last time. That's how you know it was RTZ. Okay. So at this point, we're ready to go again, and if I want to, I can start the session, get the EEG, and take a look at what's going on with the person. So I'm going to exit NeuroField, exit NeuroPlot. It's asking me if I want to save the plots. I don't do that. If I wanted to, I would have clicked the Save button. All right, I'm going to go into NeuroGuide. And we're going to go over here, and we are going to run a collection. And I go over here, and I'm going to grab and let's do eyes open. And so we start an EEG acquisition. And we start it up. And we're going to get just a couple minutes of acquisition here and do a quick and dirty analysis of the data. All right. Al says, got it. Good. Okay, as we're doing this acquisition, any other questions so far? You know, in my experience, like I said, typically we don't take EEG immediately after the sessions. You will see a brain in transition, and it takes a couple of days for the brain to settle and for the new training to really take hold. When you get somebody like an autistic child that has significant pathology and a very deregulated brain, this methodology works swimmingly simply because you need to do it every day. You will eventually train the brain to run at a different state, and after 5 days, you give the rest, the brain makes a dramatic change, and it normally holds the training. If a brain doesn't hold the training, there's different reasons for that. One could be nutritional. A person doesn't eat correctly. And 2 could be that they don't sleep or get enough good sleep. 3 could be associated with toxicity in the body, or toxicity in general in terms of exposure over time. It may not be that they're exposed to toxins now, but may have been exposed to toxins in the past. There's a number of different things that can cause a treatment not to stick. And when it does happen, it could be that the treatment is simply not effective for that particular person, and you need to change modalities and try something else, which is why I'm a firm believer in integrative methods and no one size fits all. I'm really excited about the coherence and phase and absolute power Z-score, real-time Z-score and NeuroField, simply because of where we're going to be able to take it over time. I think it's incredibly powerful, and we're going to be able to get a lot out of it. But we need to understand it more so. We need to understand how is it that what frequencies create changes in phase, coherence, and absolute power, and why. Can we reliably pick a frequency that's going to affect a frequency band? And again, in which direction? Are there frequencies that create hypercoherence? Are there others that create hypocoherence? And the same thing can be said for phase and absolute power, for that matter. We've been able to demonstrate the changes in absolute power over the last couple of years with this synchronized method. Now I believe we're going to be able to show the changes in coherence and phase over time. Okay, so I'm going to stop this. Okay, you can get that cap off your head now. And if we could hear an audience applause for Annie, who has given her EEG. Ooh, just one more time. Applause. Sarah's applauding. They're all applauding. Yay, Annie. Yay, Annie. Woo! Patricia, Sarah, Peter, Ralph, the old crew. Clap, 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 Lillian. It's so fun to have you all aboard, I tell you. I feel honored. Okay, so I'm going to do something here that I always forbade people to do. And I'm going to do just a quick and dirty automatic editing. Ralph says, what else would we expect from the brilliance of Annie? A lot of theta. Okay, we'll just let it do it. I normally don't do this because if you do use the auto edit function, you are required to go in there and review the data and take a look at what it actually selected, because sometimes it does not select good data. Now, I'm quickly eyeballing here. Who knows? I'm going to just create the map and see what we got. Interesting. Okay. So that's what she looks like now. And let's go into Wow. So the map on the left is where Annie is now, and the map on the right is where she was right before we started the session. So we're seeing a significant shift here in delta. Delta comes up, theta comes up, alpha comes up. Everything changes. High beta, that's really interesting. At F3 there, we get a pulse of high beta. The coherence has changed a bit. Yeah, so yeah, Annie's pointing out regulation here. So you can see almost immediately the external hypocoherences don't appear to be there at this point. It really did change. The hyper ones are they're still appearing to be there. The phase changed significantly as well, which is pretty powerful. I believe that if we measure her again in a couple of days, that this is going to look different. And maybe we will. Maybe we'll get another Q in a couple of days. Okay, folks. Well, let's see. We're at let's see. We are at the end of the time. I know Jill's saying it's funny to see me use auto edit. I know I don't do it. I like to edit my own data. Thank you for coming in. Please post your observations, your findings, things that you think are relevant in affecting phase coherence and absolute power with the RTZ. Let's really investigate this and get an idea of how we can solidify the procedure. I want to have the ability to replicate a finding. So if we can get a 3 standard deviation hypocoherence to correct, and we can get it to correct relatively quickly, I want to know how you did it, right? What the actual procedure was, step by step. Thank you, Cindy. She says, awesome, great job, you guys. Loving it. Wonderful. We love it too. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day. Have a great weekend. And we'll catch you on the flip side. I'm going to unmute everybody. Let's see. Unmute all. Now you can all talk.
Very well. Thanks, Nick. Thanks.
All right, you guys. Take it easy.
Nick.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Annie. Thank you, Nick.
You're welcome.
Oh, Nick.
You're welcome.
We're just going to have to...
Nick, can we get the recording?
Yeah, I'll post it eventually. I'll make sure to do that. You're welcome.
So I got here at the very end,